Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about What If Season 3, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Very unexpected return. We started off with, Darcy and Howard, and I was like, wait. If they're together, I'm like, is this going to be another timeline/universe reality, or is this going to be the same one from episode 7? And it turns out it is the one from episode 7 of season 1, the Party Thor episodes. I was like, interesting. Because we have not revisited too many universes. The only one that's kind of had the recurrence was the Captain Carter. That's the only, and she's only been the only consistent character who's popped up in all 3 seasons, which I was actually thinking about that too. I was like, oh, she hasn't popped up so far, but it's like, to be fair, her first appearance in season 2 didn't happen until episode 5, so there's still half the season left for her to pop up, but we'll see, because especially where we left her off at the end of season 2 with the Watcher. But either way, Howard and Darcy are expecting a child, and I didn't know what to expect, but I guess it kind of makes sense, the whole thing of, yeah, Darcy gave birth to an egg, but I guess you could make some parallel and connection to he is a duck, and that's of course what happened. And it's just how did that work? Let's not get to the physiology of it all, but yeah, they're having a baby, and it's really sweet to see. It's actually kind of really nice that things kind of progressed to this point, and things have kind of worked out, and now you're expecting a baby, and it's dope. But life gets a little chaotic, because initially they're presented a trip, cruise by the Grandmaster, aka DJ Foam, release the foam. But either way, they're kind of excited to take this trip and everything, because something the Watcher talks about, and we see it a little bit in this episode, is because of Thor's partying on this world, and it brought Earth to a lot of aliens' attention. There's been, this world in this particular universe has become a lot more acquainted, and there's so much of a blend of cultures, and just aliens are just out and about, and it's just willy-nilly. It's we haven't really gotten to that point in the mainline MCU. I'm curious. I don't even think the comics are really even that. Someone could correct me. I'm not knowledgeable in the comics, but I feel like most people in the comics are just your regular humans. I feel yeah, there are aliens on Earth, just like there's mutants and stuff like that. So I think, considering that's probably the closest parallel you can think, but full-blown different alien species just outwardly living in the... hey, maybe I'm mistaken, and maybe it just depends on what run of comics you look through, but I just thought that was kind of a neat thing of just just so many blending of societies, and yeah, just that just aliens just being here is such a natural thing. So to be fair, at least in this universe, there's been that more positive connotation to it, because it's some havoc was wrecked because of the party itself, but for the most part, the world seemed to be more embracing, because it was a very positive gathering of everyone, a party and stuff like that. But either way, I love the whole twist with the freaking it's oh, we have this special gathering and stuff like that. Howard and Darcy are the special guest of honor. I did love that we initially did see Yondu. I was like, he's here going after an egg. I wonder why. But then they're there, and Howard translating, he's oh my god, they're here to what was the exact phrasing? It was something essentially oh, they're here to basically eat look upon essentially Howard and Darcy. Initially it looks oh my god, they're gonna eat us, but then it's oh no, they're just gonna look upon us. So that's kind of scary. And then I love that Darcy's no, there's literally our egg. They're planning on cooking our baby. It's wait, hold on, Darcy. Oh my god, they're gonna eat our baby. She's of course, you idiot, look. But before they could, Yondu shows up, snatches the baby, and then our co-parents, not co-parents because they're a couple, so it's just our parents, they take off to, they try to chase after it, but it got away, and it's just kind of very heartbreaking for a moment, because it's right, we had one job as parents to protect our baby, and you could see obviously Darcy's so disheartened, as well as Howard, who was I think beating himself up the most, because he feels not only has he failed their baby, but he's also feeling he's failing Darcy. And it's so they contact SHIELD, which it seems SHIELD is a little more intergalactic in this universe, which I guess makes sense. Well, we know like the reason why Fury created the Avengers in the first place is because of the events of Captain Marvel kind of opened his purview, and he was already keeping an eye out, but like things really like kicked up because like right we had like every alien species in the galaxy showing up on Earth, so it's probably like yeah you probably prepared your more intergalactic response a lot quicker than you probably did. Like eventually like we know Sword is in some shape or form out there in space monitoring stuff. Sorry, couldn't get that out. So probably that gets expedited a lot more in this universe because of like the large massive overall contact with space. I'm curious like how long it's been since the events of Party Thor in episode 7 of season 1. I don't know how long it's been in universe. So I mean at least there was a 9-month period for Darcy, but we don't know if that's like pretty immediately after the events of that. But whatever the case may be, it is, and it also fits that Fury would do what he did because basically he tells them like, "Yo, there was a convergence thing that was happening at the birth of your child, and because of that, your child is kind of seen as something very powerful. So it's a situation where like everyone is going to be aiming for this child, and Shield kind of wants to keep it to themselves because it's like Fury's got to keep everything under lock and key, or at least keep a good eye on everything that could potentially be a threat or something that could eventually be a weapon for the greater good in the grand scheme of things. So, but Howard hears like he hears Fury and Coulson talking about the Collector. So it's like, all right, we're going to nowhere. It's like, well, our baby has to be somewhere. He's like, nowhere. I was like, Howard. I was like, I know it's a stupid bit, but I loved it. It legitimately made me laugh. And you're just being like, nowhere. She's like, where? Nowhere. And it's like, it's got to be somewhere. Nowhere. Howard. And it's like, okay. But they go to see the Collector, but it's not the Collector that we've come to know. In fact, it's Caecilius. And like, how did you manage that? We'll never know, which is interesting. I mean, it's funny how that works out considering like, well, we know in like episode 2 of season 1, without Thanos being the big bad in the universe, eventually the Collector eventually filled that void. But Caecilius, for whatever reason, well, I guess Dormammu maybe took more of an space approach now, maybe because of the prophecies of this baby coming about, like, and his plan. So he didn't just stay on the Earth-based side of things. He kind of took to the stars. But that's what this is all about. Like, Caecilius is trying to collect the baby because he needs a powerful vessel for Dormammu to be, like, put in. And so kills Yondu. Poor Yondu. It's like, yeah. But then there's the whole situation of, well, then S.H.I.E.L.D. busts up the function, which, once again, it is interesting that it's, like, despite being more intergalactic, it's not Sword at this point. It is still just S.H.I.E.L.D. I guess they haven't had a reason to go down the route of Sword. I guess because maybe the whole Hydra thing didn't happen, or maybe that got nipped in the bud, and so S.H.I.E.L.D. stayed S.H.I.E.L.D. and never fell. Who knows? Either way. So now, once again, it's a clashing of, well, the S.H.I.E.L.D. wants your baby, so does Caecilius and his Cold and Dormammu want your baby. That whole sequence of the baby bouncing between the different portals, it's not the exact same thing at all, but it immediately made me think of like the hot potato situation in Endgame with the gauntlet. It kind of made me think of that. So they needed a safe place to hide, and lo and behold, they go to see Loki, and he's kind of like putting together like this lodge situation, kind of almost like a resort situation. And I love, they're like, oh, like, he's like, oh, I'm so thankful that you made me your child's godfather. And they're like, right, yeah, about that. And he's like, no, you guys, he's like, what was it? Okay, you are my brother from another mother's old lady, sister from another mister. And it's like, what? He's like, we're practically family. So I was like, oh, good, we'll look after you. But then stuff pops off because they found their way, like, at first, I think it's because they talked about it early in the episode. I think Caecilius I think Yondu had talked about it, that like Olympian gods as well as the Dark Elves. Once again, this is around Thor 1, so the Dark Elves haven't been dealt with. So the other pantheon has kind of got mixed up in this. So we see like Zeus shows up along with some Dark Elves. We saw some The Skrulls. I could not remember the name to save my life. We saw them, and I was like, are they here on their own? But it's like, no, it seems like they're there in Fury. So, like, in this universe, that connection. I mean, obviously, that already predated because that connection existed because of Captain Marvel. But I'm sure, like, that got, once again, much like the whole going intergalactic, I'm sure, like, that relationship and being out in the open and then working with them probably, like, that got probably expedited along with everything else shield-wise. But either way, then Zeus shows up, which I love Loki because he was helping our parents and their baby get away, but then like his father got in the way. But you know, it's like, oh, I thought it was I thought it was Thor showing up, like maybe him and Jane. Turns out it's not. It's Zeus. So I was like, okay, not the thunder god we were hoping for. And he's out there throwing thunderbolts. Then we have Caecilius and the leader of the Dark Elves like bumping heads over this, and Darcy and Howard are just running for their lives because like, what do we do in this situation? So I mean, neither one of them has any powers. Like, I think Howard's decent with weapons, but I don't think he has any powers or anything like that. I just thought about this, and I should have added this earlier. I just thought about it, like when they were breaking in to go to Caecilius and see their baby and everything. I thought it was interesting. It's like, oh, he had to climb through the sewer grates and stuff like that. It's like, oh, just little tidbits of information about how he got away from Caecilius. I mean, to be fair, we know, not Caecilius, but the Collector, because we know, canonically speaking, he was. Because didn't he initially pop up at the end of Guardians 1? Like, wasn't he a post-credit scene? So it's like, right, that was like 2014-ish, and Thor 1 was like 2011. So I'm like, once again, just a lot of events probably played out a little bit different and expedited, whatever the case may be. It was just kind of an interesting little detail knowing like, oh, that's how he managed to escape from the Collector in the first place. But either way, my point was like, because I don't know enough about Howard the Duck. My point was like, he doesn't have any powers. He is just kind of like a talking duck. I mean, he's an alien duck. And he probably, I don't know if he's like as weapon experty as Rocket is, but I think I've seen him utilize guns and stuff, but I don't know if he has any traditional like skills. Once again, Howard, aside from knowing what he looks like and knowing his name, like I don't really know that much about Howard. I remember the movie from the 80s with Leah Thompson, but I know very little about that, and I'm sure like there wasn't a lot of stuff pulled from the comics that, you know, whatever the case may be. I just don't remember it enough to pull anything from it. I don't know if there's something to pull from that movie to be like applicable in what I'm talking about, but either way, it came down to it where it's just kind of like, what do they do and where do they go? It's like, this might be the end of the road, but you know, Howard's like, right, a girl like you, a duck like me, we're able to kind of do something like this. Felt like it was kind of meant to be. She's like, oh, it's kind of a good thing that bar sold nachos. He's like, yeah, but he's like, I knew it was kind of meant to be. She's like, I knew too. And they sing to their baby, and it unleashes some power within their baby, and it starts defending them. Start zapping everybody. I also love, and I completely forgot about this, that the Black Order shows up. They weren't here for the baby. They were like, no, we're here for the resort. Wait, did you say that baby's magical? And they call Thanos, and he's like, what? Is it the stones, or did you find the stones? He's like, oh, it's about the baby. He's like, you called me about an egg? He was like, it's a magical egg. But yeah, the energy from it's beautiful. Everyone's gathered around trying to get the egg, and then the egg cracks and like starts sending energy through everybody. And proceeds to kill everybody. So I guess that means Thanos and the Dark Elves, some of those Olympian soldiers are dead. We know Zeus got away, but it seems like everyone else got cooked. So I was like, oh, that's an interesting thing to be like, yeah, kind of a lot of major threats in the universe. Don't have to worry about Thor the Dark World ever happening in his universe, or even Infinity War Endgame happening. So also don't have to worry about Thanos wiping out all these other planets that he might not have wiped out at this point in time, plus him eventually destroying what's left of Asgard's people like he did, you know, at the beginning of Infinity War. But either way, just stuff like that's kind of interesting. And ultimately, Fury let them keep their baby because he's like, right, like there's no safer place for a baby to be than with its parents. Because for him, it's like, you've proven that, no, you'll fight tooth and nail and that we don't have to kind of worry as much about your baby. So it's like, yeah, that's good, you know? And I don't know why Fury has the whole like, Fury out. I'm like, why is that your catchphrase now? He does it multiple times throughout the episode. But I also love that Loki apparently lost his trust fund. He's like, all of it for all that's kind of the fallout of all this, but also like his dad was like, right, we'll graciously offer you a place to stay here and stuff. So I guess gave them time to recuperate and relax, and then eventually they made their way back home. And yeah, it's really, and obviously we see them kind of doing, the very plain parent thing they got to deal with, a screaming crying baby. It's like, oh, the bottle's too hot. What about the blanket? It's like, oh, she hates the way the color of this blanket. It's like, why did we pick this color? Just parent stuff. And it's like, it's actually really beautiful. And I was just thinking about it too, like this might be the most sweet and wholesome ending to a What If, because they've all been like, there's been a few that have been bleak and dark, and then there's others. The one that always comes to mind is the Doctor Strange one, that being extremely bleak and dark. But for the most part, the others are just kind of like pretty, they're either neutral or they're like set up with like, oh my god, what's coming on the horizon, dangers there, be wary. Like it's like that. Like I mean, 3 ended like last episode ended very hopefully, but 2 is what I was talking about, where we had the other celestials rolling up, like, oh, danger on the horizon, right? But I'd say the only other one I can think of is like the Christmas episode. Wasn't it the Christmas episode? The one where Happy, the one that revolved me around Happy, the Die Hard episode from last season. That's probably like the next one that'll be very like wholesome and stuff like that. So I mean, to be fair, this one ended with like had a whole bunch of mass murder from their child killing a whole bunch of people, but we'll kind of skirt past that. But like I said, for the most part, sweet and wholesome and just a lot of fun. So just thought that was kind of nice and just kind of an oddball couple. Once again, this ended up being the season of interesting pairings and scenario. I mean, once again, that's the point of What If. It's going to be these slight deviations and scenarios, but it's like it's just been some really interesting pairings. And to be fair, we got this pairing in season 1, but we're just kind of seeing like, oh, let's catch up. Like, where have your situation been? And it's like, I guess this is more of your happily ever after than that episode was your happily ever after. So either way, I just thought that was just kind of interesting. So excited to see where the next episode takes us with things. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.